Emilie Agreste, the name that echoes in Paris, the woman who started it all. It all comes back to Emilie Agreste. For someone who's barely made an appearance in the show, she continues to live on in the form of memories and pictures, unbeknownst to the characters with the exception of Gabriel Agreste, that she's actually been held in a glass coffin in Gabriel's repository. But here's the thing. Despite being told fond things about Emilie Agreste, I just can't shake the feeling that she's not who we think she is. There hasn't been much of a huge twist in Miraculous as far as we're concerned, so I'm thinking this is intentional, because the huge twist that will shock the entire fandom is that Amelie will awaken and be revealed to be the big bad villain all along. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. It's the one and only, your girl, the cartoon hotspot, and if you want to find out why I think Emilie Agreste is the true villain of this show, then don't go anywhere without giving this video a thumbs up. And if you're new to my channel, hopefully you'll be sticking around for more theory videos like this, video essays and analysis videos by turning on that bell button for post notifications. Without further ado, let's begin. So like I said, it all comes back to Emilie Agreste. She is the reason why everything is happening in Miraculous. Let's recap. Amelie was the former holder of the Peacock Miraculous, but we know that she knew it was damaged. But despite knowing, she continued to use the Miraculous, which led to her untimely demise, let's say. And if she just stopped using the Miraculous, Gabriel wouldn't be Hawkmoth seeking Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculous. So thanks a lot, Amelie. Because of you, we're invested in this slow burn romance and it's slowly killing us. So you're probably wondering, how is Amelie evil? Let's first talk about what Emilie Agreste means. The name Amelie, regardless of the spelling, comes from the Latin word emulus, which means rival, or the Greek term amelos, meaning persuasive. And what about the name Agreste? Well, Agreste literally means rural, but it can also mean wild, which is something. Emilie Agreste, wild rival, persuasive rival. The first reason why I think Emilie Agreste is not who we think she is because she's an actress. Okay, rewind. Every time Gabriel has spoken about Amelie, he described it as stubborn and dramatic, which hints that whenever she didn't get what she wants or things didn't quite go her way, she'd probably throw a fit and convince everyone, including Gabriel, to go along with whatever she wanted. And this ties back to persuasive rival. To be a good actress, you need to be able to fully convince your audience of the emotions or the actions your character is doing or feeling. Your audience needs to be captivated, in other words. They need to feel what the character feels and be convinced that you, as the actress, are embodying that role. They almost have to believe that you and your character you're playing are the same person. So my guess is, Amelie had everyone wrapped under her finger and she perpetuated a false narrative of her being sweet and kind, which everyone eventually believed. Because she was an actress, she was more than able to pretend she had good intentions, when truly she had ulterior motives. And unfortunately, I think Gabriel also fell victim to her schemes, which is why he's so blindly ignoring the severity of his actions by going after Ladybug and Cat Noir's Miraculous. Every day, Gabriel is becoming more and more reckless, putting his son in danger multiple times, neglecting him, and wreaking havoc in Paris. How badly did Amelie manipulate him? Yikes. To further develop this argument, why was Adrien only allowed to go to school when Amelie disappeared? I've decided to try something new where I ask you guys to send in your theories, where I will read some of them out in my theory videos. Shooting Starsel said, I can understand why Adrien views his mom with such high regard, but that happens when we lose someone important in our lives. We tend to remember only the good of them rather than the bad. I believe she emotionally and psychologically manipulated Adrien as a child, but passed it off as love. She played an equal part towards Adrien's abuse while he was growing up. I completely agree, and this makes sense after watching the episode Wishmaker, because it was revealed Adrien's childhood dream was wanting to be whatever his parents wished for him to be. Adrien has never had a choice. He's never had control over his own life. Aurora and Rose on Twitter gave me such an intelligent take on this whole theory. She said, I would be devastated if Amelie is not the villain. Because think about it. If she was, she would have everyone wrapped around her finger into thinking she's the greatest person. A little something I like to call educational brainwashing and classical conditioning. If you know and understand how psychology works, classical conditioning is used to teach people, usually children, right from wrong and to set rules and boundaries. Educational brainwashing is using classical conditioning to manipulate a person into following your every order and to see you as superior. Educational brainwashing gives the person no free will. All of their ideas and opinions are decided for them. They're not allowed to interact with people that their superior has chosen for them. Because your child has no free will, no thoughts, no opinions, and no perception of life. It's the reason why Adrien seems to worship Amelie, and the reason why doing anything in the outside world is so hard for him is simply because it doesn't match what his parents taught him. After Amelie left, what's interesting is that Adrien's first instinct was to leave the house. Yes to all of this, I completely agree with Aurora. Adrien's immediate want was to get out of the house, but we can assume he seemed quote-unquote fine before Amelie disappeared. This is a sensitive subject, but what I will say is that I think Adrien has been subjected to some sort of abuse from his mother, different to how Gabriel treats him. But how Amelie treated him had worse spillover effects because it took the form of manipulation, whereas Gabriel is straight up neglectful and distant. Do you ever wonder why each hero gets the miraculous they get? For example, why Marinette got the Ladybug miraculous, Max the Horse miraculous, and Kim the Monkey miraculous? Don't worry, I've got a series of videos coming soon on each miraculous and its wielders. I briefly explained why Adrien is the holder of the Black Cat miraculous in my video on the symbolism of the lucky charms, so if you want to check that out, skip to 7 minutes and 15 seconds. But for today's video, I'm going to talk about the peacock holder, who was Emilie Agreste, and how her personality is accustomed to fit that of the power the peacock miraculous grants. We know the law of miraculous is heavily inspired by the Chinese zodiac. So those born under the peacock sign have a flair for the dramatic. Peacocks crave attention, which is why they frequently initiate drama or controversy. Peacocks exist solely to be admired. The most serious flaw of this sign is that peacocks have a deep-seated desire to be proven correct all the time. They too require to be loved, admired, and praised. Peacocks perform best when they are in command. They can be dictatorial and demanding. Therefore, it's better if they're a group leader or in a position where they have complete control over their own fate. All of these personality traits link back to the meaning of Emilie Agreste, wild rival. Amelie was known to be dramatic. She was always admired and praised. But now let's talk about how she could have been dictatorial and demanding. If you've been in the fandom since the show first aired, you would know there was a spoiler before season 2 premiered. It was a spoiler of Le Paillon, and it was hinted that Amelie was the former peacock holder, but then Mayura appeared in the finale of season 2. Maybe Le Paillon was the early concept for Mayura, but I strongly doubt this given by the description of Le Paillon, who was supposedly Hawkmoth's boss. The only person I can think of who has a higher rank than Hawkmoth/Gabriel is Emilie Agreste, not Nathalie. Having said this, because Le Paillon is Hawkmoth's boss, this explains the personality trait a peacock has, that being they're controlling and demanding, and work best if they're group leader or in a position where they're in control. Which makes me think, Nathalie isn't the true holder of the peacock miraculous. She's none of those things I just described. She's not demanding or dictatorial. She takes orders from Gabriel, not the other way around. However, I'm not going to go too deep into this theory because it's kinda hard to explain, especially since Mayura was a complete serve. Oh my gosh, she killed that role. Now here's an interesting take by Princessa T, who said, as Adrien said once when Plag made him laugh, only my mum could make me laugh like that. I had a lot of hope that Amelie really was a nice person. However, when I watched Wishmaker, I realised that in Adrien's dream when he got struck, his memory claimed that his mother had blue eyes and his father had green, for which we know is not true. So my theory is that maybe in the past, Amelie and Gabriel's personalities had been swapped, as in Gabriel was sweet and caring, and Amelie was more demanding and fairly strict in some ways, like Gabriel is now. So let's say after Amelie's death, or whatever you want to call it, maybe Gabriel tried to reach her standards and become more like her, due to the fact that she's no longer around and he wants to make her proud. And maybe due to the fact that Amelie is now dead, Adrien only remembers the time his mother did make him laugh, or he only speaks about the good things about his mum, because he realizes she's no longer around and he'll never see her ever again. And I really like this take/theory because it links back to the previous theory we read, about educational brainwashing and classical conditioning. And this makes sense because if I rightly remember, in one of the Miraculous webisodes, Adrien said that once Amelie disappeared, Gabriel became cold and distant. So maybe Gabriel was always sweet and caring and Amelie was always the strict parent, the demanding parent. But because Adrien has only just lost his mum, he only remembers the good things about her and not the bad. The last thing I want to talk about before I discuss the other side of this theory is the Shanghai special. In the special, Gabriel says what we started 15 years ago, and he was referring to the prodigious. Keeping in mind, Ladybug and Cat Noir are 14 years old, so Gabriel and Amelie were up to some shady business before they were even born. Which leads me back to this question. What were Amelie and Gabriel even doing in the region of Tibet? You expect me to believe that they just so happened to be chilling there and came across their Miraculous? Sorry, I don't buy that. They had to have been looking for something. As to what they were looking for and whether or not they found what they were looking for remains a mystery. And what I mean by that is, what if they were looking for something else but ended up finding the Miraculous instead? So at least they left with something, right? But why were they looking for something in such a distant region far from the comforts of Paris? Again, I'm not going to dive too deep into this theory because it will go into the sentimonster theory. But there is a podcast by the Miraculous Besties and you guys should definitely check it out. It's available on Spotify, Amazon Music and Google. So I'll leave a link down in the description box below. Anyways, my point is, Amelie and Gabriel have been up to no good. I have limited evidence, but I'm sorry, they are too shady. The fact the Agrestes have so many secrets and mysteries just shows how dark and twisted that whole family is. So, to make this a fair argument, I'm going to read out a few of your theories on Amelie and why she might not be the villain as I argued. Claire Sabol said, I really hope Amelie is as good as Adrien makes her out to be. While we joke that Adrien is blind, it's also been shown that he has a good judge of character. He was the only student besides Marinette who knew that Lila was a liar. He knows how demeaning Chloe can be despite being her friend. And while he makes excuses for her, he isn't afraid to admit that his father can be overbearing. However, we've heard nothing but good things about Amelie from Adrien. And while we know she restricted him from going to school, it's possible she was protective, but not in the way we currently see Gabriel. If it's true that she's a good mom and person, I like to think that she used the Peacock Miraculous to secretly help others in Paris. This would explain why she would be protective of Adrien, considering she was often seeing dangers outside. Also, Adrien really just deserves a good parent figure, so Amelie waking up could help him deal with having a father as awful as Gabriel. Boris Babic commented, as much as I would love Amelie to be the secret villain, I just don't think it's a possibility because I really think she's nice and sweet as Adrien described her. In Wishmaker, her eyes were blue, and usually blue symbolizes loyalty and trust. And I think, according to Adrien, that describes Amelie. Both of these theories are pretty valid. It could just be the case that even though Amelie kept Adrien restricted from the outside world, it might just be bad parenting and nothing more. She might have been using the Peacock Miraculous for good, and if she was using it for good deeds, but eventually the damaged Miraculous took a toll on her health, it could explain why Gabriel so desperately wants to revive her, instead of grieving and moving on. It's like he feels Amelie didn't deserve to be in the predicament she's in, because she perhaps was a hero who was selfless in the sense she kept using a damaged Miraculous. Interesting. So we've seen some really good takes from both sides of this theory. Honestly, the Agreste backstory and the Hawkmoth reveal is what I'm most interested in. Not saying I don't care about the identity reveal, I do. It's just the love square has been milked for 4 seasons. 6 years basically. So I kinda want something fresh. And Amelie being revealed to be the big bad villain is fresh. I'm here for it. Okay, shoutouts for this week. It's been a while since I've done shoutouts, but in my last theory video, I asked you guys to comment down your hot takes, your controversial opinion on whether you think Marinette is in love with Adrien or the idea of Adrien. And so I'm going to be shouting out the most controversial but valid opinions because I love seeing things from a different perspective, you know. So shoutouts to Cecile Nguyen, Georgia, May Swan, Smart Cookie, Stephanie Cruz, Ali, Kitty915, Emma, Kai Nightshade and Marie Dumas Silva. And special shout outs to Golden Auburn for sending me this amazing fan art. I'm honestly blown away by the talent you guys have, and so thank you so much for sending me this. And for next week's video, if you want a shout out, all you have to do is comment down whether you think Amelie is the villain or not. I also want you guys to comment down who you think could possibly be the sentimonster in the show. Could it be Adrien, Felix, Gabriel, Nathalie even? Just comment down all your crazy theories on the Agrestes. I've seen some theories that Amelie could in fact be Adrien's mum and not Amelie. So yeah, get commenting and I'll shout out a couple of you in my next theory video. To conclude, I'm still convinced Emilie Agreste is evil. I honestly think it'd be wasted potential if Amelie weren't the villain. It could raise the stakes higher. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like, comment, and if you're new to my channel, be sure to subscribe for more theory videos like this. As for today, that's it from me and I'll see you again next time. Bye!